The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. There are many ways to garden, and today, Joel Karsten is going to show us one method that uses straw bales. Chef Chef Larson will return to the program, and he'll be showing us some great recipes using rhubarb and making sure that none of that goes to waste this summer. And of course, we'll be back in the garden and we'll be checking out different options that you have for mulch. I hope you'll stay with us. It's all coming up next on Garden Connections. Our first guest on today's program is a horticulturist by training, but he's got a really unusual process to show us. Welcome to the program, Joel. We're really glad to have you here.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's great to be with you.
So you have some formal training here, but you've decided to try a more non-traditional method of gardening. How in the world did you decide to go that route instead?
Well, I tell you what, I do have a BS degree from the University of Minnesota in horticulture, but I was born and raised on a farm where I learned the fundamentals of horticulture like most farmers understand. But when I moved to the city, there wasn't a whole lot of room for gardening, and I still wanted to have a garden, but how was I going to have a vegetable garden 3.5 hours from where I lived? Right. Most people would never attempt something like that. And I read this article in a gardening magazine, and the article, I still remember the title, it was called The Accidental Pumpkin Patch. And it was about someone who had put the insides of their pumpkin in their compost pile, and the following spring, this compost pile had grown pumpkins, and just an amazing pumpkin production. And understanding the fundamentals of how a compost pile works and exactly what happened in that person's garden.
All that nutrition, all
right,
the heat.
exactly, as it decomposed. I sort of captured some of those ideas, did a bunch of research, and then did lots of experiments after that.
So you ended up with straw, and you're going to show us this, but what, did you try some other media?
I'll tell you, I get this question a lot, especially from people with a city background. They'll say, is straw and hay the same thing? And they're really not the same thing. What we try to use is straw. Hay will work for this process, alfalfa hay or grass hay, baled up grass. It doesn't work as well, however, as straw does. Wheat straw, oat straw, barley straw are the three medias that tend to work best. Yeah, it's just the water holding capacity of straw, the fact that the little tubes are hollow inside that lets moisture get inside there and it lets it decompose more quickly. Straw just tends to work best. And remember, there should be no seeds left in your straw bales. There'll be a few, but very few seeds. And in baled grass, in baled grass, there's going to be all kinds of seeds inside there.
Seeds too that you don't want.
Right, yeah, and it sprouts, and you get a chia pet sitting out in your garden when it sprouts. So it's much better with regular straw.
And this is something that you do outdoors, even though you kind of call it container gardening. It's not something you do inside your house.
No, you're going to do this outside, and the big advantage is you can do it anywhere. If you got an old driveway, an old concrete patio, a chunk of asphalt driveway, any place where you can set some bales up, it really doesn't matter what the soil is underneath. So it's great for people that are convinced that their backyard will not grow anything.
They don't like their soil, it's too
rocky, gravelly, etc. This is the perfect opportunity. It's also nice because it's a little bit raised up in the air, which is a big advantage for anybody who has any kind of back problems, knee problems, or just can't get down on the ground.
Yep, and these, while only maybe are about 1.5 feet, a regular bale is going to be...
Yeah, 20 inches, 24 inches, yeah.
And the outside, you said, the structure holds in place with this
The strings, yeah, the strings stay in place, so you just leave the twine or the nylon strings right on the bale, and that sort of helps maintain your container throughout the season, and you'll see the inside of the bales as they start to decompose, they get nice and warm, and it's a great rooting environment for these young plants.
Where do we start? What is the beginning? You have your bales, you've set them up, and you've set them on the end, so the pokey side is up.
Right, and you just set them on the end, so strings are on the side, and then I like to put 2 steel fence posts. Put 1 fence post in the end of every row of bales that you create. The most efficient way to do it is just end to end, kind of like the example I have set up here.
And how many bales would you put in a row, or is that personal preference?
You really should, yeah, you can do however many you want, but no more than 4 or 5 with a post on each end.
Okay, so we're going to pretend these are just metal T-posts.
Metal T-posts, fence posts.
Into the ground.
And then you can just use 14 gauge fencing wire and run wires across. We put 2 wires at 10 inches, and then we'll put another 2 wires at 20 inches, and then single wires every 8 to 10 inches the rest of the way to the top of the post. That's going to create a nice trellis or a spalier wire system above our bales that many of our plants will use as they develop.
You don't have to like inoculate these bales.
Nope, you don't have to inoculate them. The bacteria is already in there, and as soon as you feed them and water them, which is what they're looking for, they begin to reproduce. And then as they reproduce, the colonies will enlarge inside the bales of bacteria, and it'll start taking over on its own, and it'll start to eat up the inside of these bales.
And the inside turns nice and dark.
Right.
And we've got a picture here that shows that.
Exactly.
It's just dark and crumbly and ready to go. And you said that takes about 10 to 12 days.
10 to 12 days, and then they'll be in condition and ready to plant. As you progress, you're going to see there's two basic ways in a typical soil garden that you plant vegetables. One is by transplants, the other is direct seeding.
Yes.
The same thing applies here.
You can do both in here?
You can do both here. You can use a transplant. Essentially, you're going to buy your pre-started tomato, cucumber, etc. at the garden center, and at the point where it's decomposed, you can see here in the picture, you're going to dig out a hole to put your transplant in. You'll see the straw will have decomposed. It'll get a little mushy, and it's much easier to dig out than brand new fresh straw. You're going to dig a little bit of hole, put your transplant down in there, and then you're going to backfill around it with some nice, clean, either compost that you've got out of your composter, so you know it's nice and clean and broken down and sterile. That's important, so there's no weed seeds and things in it. Or you can buy potting mix at the garden center, planting mix, and use planting mix to backfill around those pre-started plants.
And this is compost from your garden?
This is actually just potting mix, just planting mix. Yep.
Okay. That you just
and then,
picked up at the garden center.
Right, and you're going to use this to heal in around the transplants that you put in. You're also going to use this to cover the surface of the bales. You put about a 2-inch layer or so on top of your bales, and then pack it down nice. You can just use a piece of wood or something to pack it down and nest it real well into the straw bales, as you can see in the picture here. And then you're going to go ahead and plant. And I always suggest when people plant that they use the in-the-row spacing that's recommended on the seed pack, and then checkerboard your seeds across the surface so that you space them apart at the in-the-row spacing, but in a checkerboard pattern across the surface of your bales.
And you can actually get more in your bale than you would in, so you don't want to just run it down.
Right,
right
just
down the
don't
middle.
do just one row. Actually it would be multiple rows, sort of in that checkerboard pattern. Once you get them planted, of course, smooth it off to cover up the seeds, and the seeds will stay in contact with this little layer of potting mix, which holds in the moisture and allows them to germinate and grow roots, and then the roots grow down into the bales, which at that point will have decomposed a little bit more and will be nice and warmed up, which is a real big advantage for us.
And let's talk about that, because this is different than growing in the ground. You're somewhat at the mercy of the ground temperature that exists.
Right.
But straw bales actually generate their own heat.
Right, yeah, so it's like growing on top of a little heater. The other thing we like to do is after we get our seeds in place or our transplants in place, we'll then take a piece of poly and we'll run a piece of plastic or poly right through this bottom row of strings.
Okay.
Actually wires in the real straw bale garden, just demonstration purposes here, we use string. And then you're going to tuck that poly right underneath the string on the bottom row of that straw bale. And this creates, for about the first 3 or 4 weeks of our garden's life, we're going to be growing our little seedlings and our little transplants inside of the straw bale greenhouse.
So it's a little greenhouse. It holds in the moisture. It emphasizes the heat, not only coming up from the bale, but from the sun as well.
Exactly.
This is amazing, and it's really simple. I mean, these are...
Yeah, it's pretty simple. And you're going to, if it gets too hot during the day, you can just pull it to the end of the row, just like a shower curtain. Use a little clamp to fasten it behind the post so it's out of the way. Let your plants be exposed to the air, and then if it gets cool at night, I always suggest anything under 45 degrees, nighttime temperatures, then just pull it back across. If it would happen to get cold enough to freeze, if you planted that early in the season, a lot of times people are running out in their PJs covering things up with milk jugs.
Sure.
You don't need to worry about that here, because as long as you're tucked in real nice.
And so this will work so they don't have to throw a blanket over the top of it.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
It helps protect those plants. And as you'll see, as you cover it up, it helps hold in a lot of moisture as well. I use in all my gardens a soaker hose, just one length of soaker hose right down the middle on top of the bale. And that's what I use. I have an automatic little faucet timer that turns on and waters the garden for a certain length of time every day or every other day. Right, so it makes it really, it's maintenance free. One of the best things about straw bale gardening, you don't have to pull weeds, because there's no weed sprouts. You might get a few sprouts of oats or wheat that'll come out, and you maybe get a rare weed that will come out here and there. I always tell people, if you give yourself 30 seconds per bale per summer, that'll take care of all your weeding.
Because it really you're starting with a straw bale that is relatively clean, and you've added potting soil that has already been sterilized or comes from a trusted source, so that you don't have that weed seed base that you would in your garden.
And for people who like to grow tomatoes, if you get an infection, it's a common infection in tomatoes called verticillium wilt, which will defoliate your tomatoes and makes it hard to grow decent tomatoes. this method works great for those people because you can put your bales right on top of that infected soil in your garden, and remember,
and
it won't come up through it. So this has no verticillium wilt in it. You're making your own soil every spring as you decompose these bales.
So these strings, your tomato plants, your little plants are going to come, your seedlings. Keep going up?
Yeah, the next pair of wires is going to be 10 inches and then 20 inches. So if the tomatoes get up and start touching the 10-inch poly, just pull it out and move it up to the 20-inch level. And then by that time,
strings in place because that'll provide some support.
That helps. You know, the plants will climb up. Your beans and peas and tomatoes, etc., will use that wire as they climb up. Other things like cucumbers. Put your cucumber vines up on these wires.
Something like this.
Yeah, it's great because the cucumbers, you can come along now and you can stand up and pick them.
Right, you're not bending over.
Right, you're not bending over, and they're nice and straight, and the pickles grow straight when they hang on a wire, you know, so there's no little arc to them. And the other thing, they don't have any soil residue on them or mold or mildew or anything like that.
You're not getting that rain splash up on your plant leaves.
Yeah, it's a great way to grow. Even other vining crops, you can put pumpkin vines up on here and then pluck the flowers off of those vines and let the other 2 or 3 vines on that plant, let those grow on the ground. And the ones that are up on the wire are very productive vines at that point. They do lots of photosynthesis.
Is there anything that you can't grow in a straw bale? Because I know you've laid out some things. You've got seeds, you've got seed potatoes.
Onion sets right in the bale. You can do potatoes. It's a great way to grow potatoes. You do 3 potato cuttings in a bale, and then you can do another crop over the surface of that bale while the potatoes are developing. And come to the end of the season, you cut the strings, kick the bale over, and gather your potatoes. There they are.
Great idea.
They just fall out on the ground.
You even have some flowers. I mean,
yeah,
you can do
flower bulbs. You can, if you like cut flowers, you know, if you like to bring flowers into the house, this is a really great way in the back corner of your garden somewhere, plant 20, 30 gladiolus bulbs inside of here. The great advantage of that is you can let the bulb finish inside the bale throughout the season. And then when fall comes, you break the bale open, and now you've got these bulbs that you don't have to dig up, go through all that work.
And that always is a pain for a lot of gardeners who won't grow bulbs that they have to dig up in the fall. Or they don't remember to, and then they lost their bulbs. They can just open these up and get them out. That is a great idea.
Yeah, it's a great way.
Love this idea.
And of course, anything that you normally would grow. People ask me all the time, can I grow this? Can I grow that? I say, if it grows at this latitude, yes, you can grow it. Even things that we don't necessarily think about growing this far north, things like peanuts. I'm growing peanuts in my straw bales because, because we get a little longer growing season with the early planting in the cover, and it's a little hotter, a little warmer, early season soil.
So would you keep this cover on longer then?
No, I just take it off about mid-June, end of June, right when the nighttime air temperatures stay above 60, 65 degrees. Then really the covers are more of a disadvantage because they're going to get too hot during the day than the advantage of the warm temperatures at night.
And by then we're in the heat of summer.
Right, we're in the nice warm temperatures. But yeah, I often plant much earlier than what I call my competitors, those that garden in the soil, because of this advantage.
Because they have things like high tunnels or hoop houses and things like that, but those are big. We visited some of those places. This is on a more manageable scale for a home gardener.
Yeah, a 20 bale garden, you have about a $200 investment in a 20 bale straw bale garden, including, you know, the posts, the bales, everything. Yeah. So it's a very minimal investment.
Joel, thank you so much for coming in and showing us how this works. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate it.
Stay tuned for more Garden Connections.
The next recipe we're going to do is a savory dish with pork tenderloin and a rhubarb caramelized onion chutney. Now the first thing we need to do for that is caramelize the onions. And I've already got those started because they take a little while. So basically, low and slow onions and some butter. We let that cook until they get nice and golden. The next thing we need to add is a pound of rhubarb that's just been cut up into 1/2-inch pieces. We can season that at the same time with some sugar and salt and pepper. Now we don't want to use too much sugar in this dish because we want it to be savory and not sweet. We're going to let that cook together. Until the rhubarb breaks down and it gets a bit saucy. Then at the very end, we're going to add a little bit of Riesling wine and let that simmer. The next part of the dish is for the pork itself. I've taken some pork tenderloin and cut it into medallions and then pounded those out into thin cutlets. I've seasoned those with salt, pepper, and some fresh sage. So to cook those, we take a hot pan. We're going to add a tablespoon of grapeseed oil. I like using grapeseed oil. Swirl that around a bit. And then cook the cutlets for about 2 minutes on each side. When the pork is done cooking, we're going to remove it to a clean plate, and then we're going to add the sauce to the pan that we cooked the pork in, because that will deglaze all those nice brown juices. So there we have it, pork tenderloin with rhubarb and caramelized onion chutney. Rethinking rhubarb, because there's nothing better than eating fresh from your garden.
We're out here in the community garden, and today we're going to be talking about mulch, which Jennifer Oftelie is here with us today, and that is one of her favorite subjects.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. There are some great things that mulch can do for you, and Jennifer is going to be helping us out this summer by taking care of the garden. Mulch can really reduce a couple of your kind of regular chores that you've got to be doing. One of the first things that mulch can do for you is help suppress weeds. As you can see, the weeds have already started to come in the garden, and so we're going to be hoeing to get rid of them. We've got some grass that's coming. We've got some broadleaves that are coming, and so a good thick layer of mulch can really help suppress those weeds and reduce that chore in the garden. Another great thing that mulch can do is preserve soil moisture. Now, we've had plenty of rain this spring so far, but when we get into those summer months, we've got 10 days to maybe 2 weeks without any rain. It's hot and nice and sunny. We're going to want to hold that moisture in the ground next to the roots, and a nice layer of mulch will help do that. It'll retain the moisture in the soil. A third benefit to mulching is that it helps build your soil. When you lay your mulch down, it will decompose throughout the season, and it will help build your soil. It will nourish all those little microorganisms that Rich Finstead at Frontier Labs told us about a few weeks ago, and it will really make your soil more healthy. We have several examples to show you today, and Jennifer's got the first one on our list. What have you got, Jennifer?
Well, let's talk about leaves. Most people have access to leaves of some kind. These were actually chopped up last fall and stored outside. They are near compost. I mean, look at these. You can't even tell they were leaves. I'm kind of excited to use this mulch, actually. It's really dark in color. I don't know if you can see it, but it's real rich. So what we're going to do with it is we're just going to spread it around, surround the plants. Now, leaves are really nice. Pine needles really need to be avoided, however. The acidity can be kind of tough on the soil. And you're going to want to put it on as thick as you can, as thick as you're able. And what happens with a real thick mulch is, again, it cuts out the light to those weeds. You can also use whole leaves for this. However, the whole leaves tend to blow away, especially on a day like today with the gusty winds. It's tough to keep that kind of mulch in place. Let's see what Stephanie's got going on over on her side of the garden.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. We have roughed up the soil a little bit over here to try to discourage some of those broadleaves, and now we're going to put down wood chips. Now, wood chips is something that you can use as a mulch. Isn't typically used in a vegetable garden. As you can see, these wood chip pieces are quite large compared to the chopped up leaves, which will decompose rapidly, and we'll probably have to reapply that a couple times throughout the summer. Wood chips don't decompose as rapidly. You don't use them in a vegetable garden because you don't really want big chunks in your garden. And you also don't want to tie up your nitrogen when it's trying to decompose all this carbon. So a lot of times wood chips are used in flower beds or in landscaping around trees, and that's a great use for it. It often is used in combination with a landscape fabric as well. Since we do have a border of flowers around our garden, we're going to spread our wood chips next to the flowers. There we go, that's starting to look good. I'll finish this off. Jennifer's got another example to show you.
Another way to use mulch is to use straw. It's very, very versatile, and it's definitely my first choice. Personally, it's my first choice, unless of course you can get those great leaves. But it's really easy to get it nice and thick, and it doesn't blow away like other mulches, which I really like. Right here, our radishes are starting to come up, our icicle radishes, and then also our dragon carrots. They're very, very teeny tiny right now. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna mulch either side of the radishes and carrots, and we're just gonna lay it nice and thick. Now you don't wanna lay it over the top of the plant to hinder any growth, especially at this early stage. As they get bigger, you can mulch around the individual plants. But until then, we're just gonna mulch either side. And again, straw is super fantastic for maintaining that moisture. Really nice. And sometimes, if you're laying a lot down, you can hit it with the hose to water it, just to make sure that it settles a little bit. And you can always reapply more to make it thicker, because as it is watered, it will settle, and you'll see that there'll be bare spots where it's not quite as thick, and that's where the weeds will come up. Another way to use the straw is in walking paths. It's nice to lay down newspaper to completely block out, and you can lay it somewhat thick in your walking path. And by the end of the season, this paper will compost and get nice and squishy. And then it can just be left in the garden. And then on top of the newspaper, you then take your straw and help keep it down. It's also nice to know if your newspaper publisher uses a soy-based ink. Again, everything you use on your soil ends up in your soil. Okay, one final way to use straw is to lay it nice and thick, and then to just literally move the straw aside and transplant directly into the soil. So we've kind of roughed the soil up, it's all ready to go, and we're gonna lay the straw nice and thick. Now, today I'm gonna transplant some kale. We've got some nice curly kale.
Well, that's really looking great, Jennifer.
Oh, thanks.
That's really nice. Tucked in there so well.
Here we go.
Looks good. We'll water those and they're all set.
Well, thanks.
Well, our last one to demonstrate today is a landscape fabric. And this is kind of a two-person job. Will you give me a hand?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Here we have some landscape fabric that we're going to go ahead and put down in the section of the garden that we're going to put our peppers, both our sweet peppers and our hot peppers. And this is kind of a two-person job. It's a little bit breezy today. What we have here is just a standard garden fabric, a landscape fabric. I chose one that is not as thick. It has a thinner weave to it to allow the moisture to come through when it rains. You can buy this very thick and will be tougher at suppressing those weeds, but it also won't let in as much moisture. So in a vegetable garden, I chose one that had a little bit looser weave to it. Okay. So what we're going to do is just unroll it and lay it right on the ground. Jennifer, if you can grab that end.
About right?
There we go. And what they give you are these fabric pins. They're called anchor pins. Jennifer, I'll give you some. And they're just U-shaped, like so. And you use them to just punch it right through the fabric to hold it in place. So I'm gonna take this, line it up right. And
would you like me to pin it all the way down here?
Yep. And we'll probably put a couple in the middle too, just to keep it from blowing away. And then what we'll do when it's time to put in our peppers, we're going to just plant right into this, just in a similar way that Jennifer did with the straw mulch as well. Now this kind of material can be used, if you're careful with it, can be used from year to year. You do have to pull it up in the fall. This is not something that will disintegrate or you don't want to turn it into the soil at all. So usually you can get a year, maybe 2 out of it, and then your recycling options are kind of limited. So it is something that you would have to dispose of. So we've showed you a few examples of how to use mulch in your garden. I hope you'll give them a try. For Jennifer Oftelie, I'm Stephanie Passingham, and I hope you'll join us next week on Garden Connections. On Garden Connections, we'd love to see photos of your garden. Or if you have questions for our garden experts, contact us by emailing garden@ksmq.org or like us on Facebook.